At the beginning of this story, we see a girl lost in thought, thinking Appa is probably in class by now. The scene suddenly shifts to a bustling classroom where a girl bursts in, her excitement barely contained as she shouts, "I just saw a hella good-looking guy by the office. He just transferred here, and he's a senior." The girl who was lost in thought earlier perks up, thinking a senior transfer student. Could it be Appa? The possibility that it could be her brother, whom she believed had died in a plane crash with their parents 10 years ago, sends her mind racing. We are then introduced to our protagonist, Aijin. After a decade of presumed death, he is finally reunited with his grandfather, who is overwhelmed with relief and tears upon seeing his grandson alive. The emotional reunion is almost too much for his grandfather, who never gave up hope. Dayun, his younger sister, stares at Aijin, struggling to believe that the boy standing before her is really her brother. So much time has passed, and the brother she once knew has been transformed by experiences she can't even begin to imagine. Fast forward to the present, where a yellow-haired girl is calling out to Dayun, snapping her out of her reverie. "You idiot! How many times do I have to call you?" the girl demands, frustration lacing her voice. Dayun quickly apologizes, but the yellow-haired girl isn't interested in apologies. She's more concerned with borrowing Dayun's gym clothes for P. Dayun hesitates, asking, "If I lend it to you, what am I supposed to wear?" The response is immediate and harsh. A slap, followed by a venomous retort. "Are you insane? You think you're allowed to talk back to us?" Dayun's heart sinks as she realizes, once again, that no one will step in to help her. She feels utterly powerless against the bullying that has become a daily torment. Meanwhile, it's Aijin's first day at his new school. The teacher introduces him to the class, explaining that Aijin had been living abroad for a long time due to personal reasons, and asks the students to help him adjust. The girls in the class are immediately struck by his good looks, whispering excitedly among themselves. The boys, on the other hand, are less than thrilled, feeling an instinctive rivalry. The teacher directs Aijin to an empty seat at the back of the room, and as he walks towards it, a boy named Jae-hyung watches him with growing disdain. Why is everyone going crazy over this guy? Jae-hyung thinks bitterly. He just looks pathetic to me. Deciding to put Aijin in his place, Jae-hyung sticks out his foot, intending to trip him. But Aijin, with the reflexes honed by years on the battlefield, stops short, giving Jae-hyung a piercing glare. Jae-hyung, taken aback, sneers, "Why are you glaring at me?" Aijin's mind flashes back to a memory, a stern warning from a lieutenant. "While you're living in Korea, avoid fighting at all costs." Aijin sighs inwardly. "I already know that much. Why would I engage in battle when my data on that stuff is insufficient? I have no intention of moving too hastily and getting killed like some amateur." He remembers the lieutenant's words clearly. "I'm telling you not to fight because I'm worried for your opponent." Aijin decides to let it go, silently moving to his seat, leaving Jae-hyung seething with unfulfilled anger. Park Young-chan, the boy sitting next to Aijin, introduces himself in a whisper. "You must have been surprised just now. I saw Jae-hyung stick his foot out. In our class, there's Jae-hyung and the guy sitting behind him, Hyuk-jin. Just be careful of those two." Aijin nods in acknowledgement, making a mental note of the potential troublemakers. As the first period begins, the math teacher enters the room and starts the lesson. Aijin, though outwardly attentive, finds his mind drifting as he observes the students around him. Outside the window, students are playing during P, a sight that seems almost alien to Aijin after the brutal years he spent on battlefields. He thinks to himself, "This country is too peaceful." After school ends, Dayun spots Aijin waiting for her at the gate. They decide to walk home together, but the atmosphere is thick with awkwardness. Aijin breaks the silence, saying, "There's no need to be flustered. I also feel the same. I was only 9 during the accident. I barely have any memories of you or grandfather. It must be worse for you since you were only 7. Their attempt at conversation is cut short when Dayun hears the familiar, dreaded voice of her bully. The bully girl is sitting with 2 boys, discussing something about a girl named Heejin. Dayun panics, thinking, "What should I do?" One of the boys notices Dayun and asks the bully, "Who's that?" She sneers and replies, she's the one Jean is targeting. The bully assumes that Aijin is Dayoon's boyfriend and loudly mocks, I guess even you can date. Dayoon, flustered, quickly clarifies, Aijin is my brother. Aijin, observing the interaction, asks, is that girl your friend? Dayoon lies, saying she's a friend from class. But Aijin isn't fooled. His intense glare is fixed on the group. One of the boys, irritated by Aijin's stare, snaps, why are you glaring at me? Look away. But Aijin doesn't budge, continuing to assess the situation with a trained eye. For someone picking a fight, he's way too defenseless, Aijin thinks. He's closing the distance like it's nothing, while exposing every weak spot on his body. He's not carrying a weapon either. Why is he so confidently exposing how defenseless he is? Remembering the lieutenant's advice, Aijin decides to avoid the conflict and looks away. But the bully, misinterpreting Aijin's restraint as weakness, becomes even more aggressive. Dayoon, sensing the escalating tension, quickly apologizes. My brother was living abroad for a long time, and he's not used to the culture here yet. Her words only fuel the bully's anger. The situation spirals as Dayoon's fear becomes palpable, her body trembling as the bully looms closer. Seeing his sister's distress, something snaps inside Aijin. He calmly steps forward and, with precise, controlled force, strikes the bully's hand, causing him to drop his aggressive posture. Dayoon, Aijin says softly, stand still for a bit, as he gently covers her face with his hand to shield her from what's about to happen. The bully, now enraged, charges at Aijin, but before he can land a blow, Aijin delivers a swift punch that sends the bully crashing to the ground, unconscious with just one hit. Looking down at the fallen bully, Aijin thinks, I guess I broke my promise to the lieutenant on the first day. The second boy, who had been watching, is now trembling with fear, realizing that he's completely outmatched. After the scene transitions, we find ourselves in a training ground where the lieutenant is overseeing a group of soldiers. The intensity of the training is palpable as the men go through their drills with precision. One of the soldiers approaches the lieutenant, asking, didn't you say today was the day? The day Aijin goes to school? The lieutenant, his gaze unwavering from the training session, replies, yes, it is. He pauses, a hint of concern crossing his features as he adds, we educated him for half a year, but I'm still worried. He lived for 10 years in a place like that since he was 9. I sure hope he can adjust well. But then, with a confident tone, the lieutenant reassures himself as much as the soldier. He's definitely going to be fine. I taught him myself, after all. The scene shifts to Aijin in the middle of a confrontation with the bullies. The air is thick with tension as one of the bullies lies passed out on the ground, having been taken down with a single hit. Before the second bully can react, Aijin suddenly appears in front of him and delivers a powerful blow to his stomach. The second bully crumples to the ground, also defeated with just one hit. The girl who had been instigating the situation looks on in horror, her fear escalating as Aijin turns his deathly stare toward her. She's frozen in place, unable to process the swift and brutal efficiency with which Aijin has dealt with her accomplices. Dayoon, who had been shielding herself with Aijin's jacket, tentatively pulls it away from her face and calls out to her brother. Aijin, snapping out of his intense demeanor, sees the bully sprawled out on the ground and notices the confused look on Dayoon's face. Without saying anything to the girl, he walks over to Dayoon and asks gently, shall we go home? As if nothing had happened, Aijin thanks her for holding onto his jacket. The girl who had witnessed the entire scene is left in shock, reeling from the stark contrast between Aijin's brutal efficiency and his calm, almost tender interaction with his sister. On their way home, Dayoon can't help but ask, were you the one who did that to those two bullies? Aijin replies simply, yeah. Dayoon, surprised by this side of her brother, thinks that's unexpected. He doesn't seem like someone who would do that. She then gently reminds him, in this country, staring at people is rude. Aijin nods. Even where I used to live, you had to be careful making eye contact. It could potentially be dangerous. Curious, Dayoon asks, then why did you do that just now? Aijin's response is straightforward, because it looked like they were causing you trouble. Back at home, we see their grandpa bustling around insisting, I told you, I'll do it. You should sit down and eat some fruits, Ijin. But Ijin, ever helpful, is already getting ready to do the dishes. Grandpa, now sitting down, looks at him with concern and asks, I hope the food today was to your liking. I tried my best at preparing it, but I'm not very skilled. Ijin, with a warm smile, reassures him, I always enjoy your cooking. The food is always delicious. Hearing this, Grandpa beams with happiness. His voice carries a mixture of pride and worry as he asks about Ijin's first day at school. How was your first day at school? Were there any problems? Ijin, not wanting to burden his grandfather, simply replies, there were no problems. Later that night, as Ijin lies in bed, his thoughts drift back to the day he returned home, and the memory of his grandfather crying tears of relief and joy fills his heart with warmth. But soon, those comforting thoughts are replaced by a more haunting memory. The day of the plane crash that changed everything. Ijin's heart races as the traumatic memory invades his sleep, and he awakens in a cold sweat. It was just a dream, but the pain feels all too real. Unable to sleep, Ijin leaves his room. He finds Dayun already up, preparing breakfast in the kitchen. She greets him with a smile. You're awake? I was about to wake you up myself. Ijin, still a bit shaken, asks, Where's Grandpa? Dayun explains, he left for work at dawn. She notices the confusion on Ijin's face and adds, Grandpa took some days off because of you, but he started working again today. Before leaving for school, Dayun informs Ijin, I have to go early today. I left last night's leftovers on the table for you to eat. At school, we shift our focus to Heejin and the girl who was involved in the incident with Ijin the day before. Heejin, with a calculating tone, asks, So you're saying the guy who transferred yesterday is Dayun's brother? The girl, still visibly shaken, nods. She recalls the sheer force and skill with which Ijin had dealt with the two boys, and fear grips her once more. In the present day, she can't help but think, are we going to be okay if we keep targeting Dayun? The image of Ijin's cold, unyielding eyes haunts her thoughts. But then she remembers that Heejin's brother is part of the Alpha group among the third years. With a renewed sense of false security, she convinces herself, we're going to be okay. Later, Heejin confronts Dayun, hitting her from behind and mocking her. Don't overreact. Look at little Dayun acting tough, because she has a brother now. She taunts Dayun, ordering her to follow if she doesn't want to get beaten up. They end up behind the school, where Heejin's bullying escalates. She sneers, What did I tell you about acting out? Dayun, confused and scared, stammers, I don't know what you're talking about. Heejin, seething with anger, explains, I'm talking about yesterday. Your brother can fight a bit, and that's why little Dayun forgets her place and opposes us. But oh dear, now your shitty brother's school life is going to be tiresome too. Dayun, now panicked, asks, What do you mean? Heejin reveals the connection between her brother and the bullies Ijin had fought. The person your brother beat up yesterday is my brother's friend. She smirks. My brother probably met your brother by now. Dayun, terrified at the thought of her brother being harmed because of her shouts, What are you planning on doing to my brother? But before she can get any answers, Heejin slaps her across the face. Dayun, holding back tears, thinks, Because of me, brother's going to get into this mess. She runs away, overwhelmed by guilt and fear. Back at Ijin's classroom, tension hangs in the air as some students enter, including the two boys Ijin had fought the day before. With them is an older boy with orange hair, Heejin's brother, Kim Kisu. Dayun, battered and bruised, arrives at the classroom. Ijin's eyes narrow as he sees his sister's injuries. Kim Kisu, noticing Dayun's arrival, mockingly says, Was the sister worried for her brother? My sister just nags me for favors all the time. Heejin, not far behind, chimes in, Even I would be worried if my brother got beaten up. But Ijin's focus is solely on his injured sister. His anger begins to simmer as he realizes what must have happened. Earlier, in the classroom, Jae-hyung and Hyukjin had been bullying Youngchan, pelting him with rubber bands. But their antics came to a halt when Ijin entered and calmly sat beside Youngchan. Youngchan, ever friendly, asked, What are you doing after school? Want to come with me? I can show you around. But Ijin declined, I don't think I can today. I have to go home with my little sister. Young Chan, surprised, inquired further. Did you guys transfer together? Aijin explained. My sister was already attending this school. Curious, Young Chan asked. What's her name? When Aijin told him, her name is Daeyoon, Young Chan's expression darkened. He warned, your sister, her school life is difficult right now. She was popular since middle school because she's cute and does well in school, which attracted a lot of male students. But there was a girl who had a crush on those boys and started bullying Daeyoon for it. Aijin, his concern growing, asked, bullying? And everyone just watched it happen? Young Chan nodded sadly. That's because the girl's older brother is Kim Kisu, the top god in the third year's class 3. Daeyoon's life got even harder after getting into the same class as that girl in high school. The bullying gets so bad that people are surprised she's still attending school. Aijin's thoughts raced as he recalled how Daeyoon always reassured their grandfather that her school life was going great. The realization of her suffering hit him hard. But now, Kim Kisu stands before him, flanked by his goons. Kisu arrogantly calls out, Aijin. Aijin, unfazed, simply asks, who are you? Kisu, clearly used to being recognized, introduces himself. That's right. You know me even though you just got here. But Aijin isn't intimidated. Instead, he glares at Kisu with a look that sends chills down his spine. Kisu, not one to back down, orders his minions to bring Aijin to him. But Aijin moves like lightning, taking down the first bully with a single punch. The second one charges at him, but Aijin effortlessly dodges the attack and takes him down just as quickly. The third falls just as fast. The classroom falls silent as everyone watches in shock. Aijin, his voice calm yet deadly, says, so you're the ones who've been giving my sister a hard time? Kisu and Heejin feel a wave of fear wash over them. Kisu, trying to maintain his composure, smirks and says, you know a few tricks. He lunges at Aijin, but Aijin easily blocks his attack. Kisu tries again, but it's no use. Aijin grabs Kisu's leg and slams him to the ground, delivering a final blow to his face. Kisu, once feared by the school, lies defeated at Aijin's feet. Jaehyung and Hyukjin, who had been so confident before, now sit in stunned silence. Heejin, too, is frozen in disbelief. Aijin turns to Heejin and her cronies, walking toward them with a menacing calm. Heejin, terrified, thinks Aijin is going to hit her. But Daeyoon, who had been watching everything unfold, steps in front of her brother, pleading, I'm okay now. Let's go. Aijin, still simmering with anger, pauses. He looks at Daeyoon, his expression softening. These are the ones who bullied you all this time. Weren't they bullying you just now too? He asks. But Daeyoon, wanting to defuse the situation, insists, I'm okay now. Reluctantly, Aijin lets it go, walking with Daeyoon back to her class. The students who witness the fight are left in awe, realizing just how strong the new transfer student is. Jaehyung, still in shock, mutters, that transfer student is really strong. Heejin, meanwhile, is left staring at her injured brother, her mind racing. On their way out, Daeyoon apologizes to Aijin. I'm sorry. Aijin, confused, asks, for what? She explains, because of me, yesterday and today, you were forced to get into fights. But Aijin, with a soft smile, reassures her, of course I'd fight. Where I used to live, most people only thought about themselves. No matter what happened to others, they didn't care if it didn't involve them. But there were times when even those people acted differently. It was when their family got involved. That's why I wondered just what a family is. As Aijin returns to his class, Jaehyung, Hyukjin, and Youngchan all praise him for his fighting skills, clearly impressed. Meanwhile, Kisu is seething with anger, thinking that something's different about him. But his aura and the way he fights? Heejin tries to snap him out of it. How long do you plan on staying like this? You were just caught off guard, right? Just don't do that next time. It's just one person. Are you going to act like this because one guy beat you up? But Kisu, still humiliated, snaps back, shut up. Try fighting Aijin yourself. Frustrated, Heejin retorts, you got beaten up by one person and now you're taking it out on me? With that, she storms out, heading back to her classroom. There, she spots Daeyoon, who is now ignoring her. Hee-jin, still fuming, sneers. I'm jealous. Your school life is surely great now. If something bad happens, you can just go crying to your brother. But as Dayun continues to ignore her, Hee-jin realizes that her power over Dayun is slipping. Angry and frustrated, she thinks, do I have to just quietly watch Dayun from now on? There's no way I'm doing that. This concludes part 1 of the story. Don't forget to subscribe for the next part.